Probably the most consistent criticism that I've heard from Dreamweaver users over the years was regarding the performance of the built-in FTP client. Well, I'm happy to report that in Dreamweaver CS6, the FTP capabilities of Dreamweaver gets a major overhaul. While you might not be able to physically see much of a difference between CS6 and previous versions, you're certainly going to notice a difference in performance. So to show those performance differences off, I'm going to show you a little bit of what Dreamweaver can do now with its FTP capabilities. And I'm going to go over to the Files panel, and I'm just going to go ahead and expand the local and remote to show the local and the remote sites at the same time. Now, again, on the Mac, it's going to pop this up in a separate window. On the PC, it's just sort of going to take over the screen. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this a little bit, and I'm going to open up my server log because I want to show you guys what is going on when I start FTPing back and forth. So I have a live connection to my server. Now, I've got to admit, here at the lynda.com studios, we have a pretty fast network connection. So when I was testing this out earlier, I'm like, okay, see how long that takes, and boom, it would go. So one of the things that you're going to notice right off the bat, that there's a speed improvement in the FTP capabilities for Dreamweaver. So that alone is huge. It's a lot faster. So regardless of your connection speed, you should notice an uptick in the speed performance when you're FTPing files back and forth. You'll notice that on my remote server, currently I have an assets directory, and if I open that up, I can see that I have a large image.jpg, and you can see it's 8.85 megs. And right over here in the assets directory that's local, I have a large graphic, which is 15 megs. So essentially, I want to make sure that I have both of these in both locations on my remote server as well as locally. So that's going to result in me getting one of the files and putting the other one. So I'm going to show you one of the things that Dreamweaver has now, which is called multi-channel support. Multi-channel support allows Dreamweaver to basically do multiple actions at one time. So it can send files at the same time. So instead of having to wait for each file to finish, it'll start sending those files simultaneously. And it also allows me to both get and put files at the same time. So if I grab this one and tell it to put, and then I grab this one and tell it to get, you'll notice that right over here in the background file, both of these are being get and put at the exact same time. One of the things you didn't see just then was the fact that Dreamweaver now gives me tooltips to sort of let me know the queued files that I have uploading, sort of where they are. So if I were to take the rest of these guys and go ahead and put those as well, you'll notice that I get little icons that show that they're in the queue. And if I hover over them and they're actually uploading, it'll show me kind of what the percentage complete is. You can see it hasn't started on contract yet, so it says uploading 0% complete, but as soon as it starts to upload it, it'll let me know. Now, if I'm uploading a much larger file like one of these graphics, I'm going to go ahead and take the 8 megabyte one, and I'm just going to get rid of it in my remote site and go ahead and put that up. You'll notice that if I hover over this, now I get a little tooltip that tells me kind of what the percentage of this is. It's a 6% complete. So that tooltip gives you a percentage value of where the file is, whether it started or not, or what percentage it is. So if I get rid of one of these, let's say large image, so I'm going to go ahead and just delete that in my remote. If I go ahead and decide to put this up again, so if I choose put, you'll notice that now when I hover over this, it tells me 5% complete, 28% complete, 46. So I get some feedback on it as to how far along the process it is and whether it's queued up or whether it's actively transferring. So if you see a green, that's actively transferring. If you see it in sort of a red, orangish color, that lets you know that it's queued and it will be uploaded or downloaded shortly. Now, another nice feature that's been added to the Files panel in CS6 is a visual indicator of whether you're going to be syncing files to the remote server or if you're using a testing server. A lot of times, Dreamweaver basically just remembers the last server that you've uploaded something to. So if you were hooked into the testing server and you upload something, that's where it's going to go the next time you do a get or a put function until you basically choose the other server. Well, it's easy to forget that. So let me kind of show you how this works. So I'm going to go ahead and maximize this, and then I'm going to collapse basically to show sort of the files view itself. Now, when I'm uploading and downloading files, this is typically what I see. I basically don't expand it unless I really need to examine the directory structure of my remote site or my testing site. So this is pretty much what I see. I'll grab a file and I'll just upload it or download it from here or from the file itself. So you'll notice that we have this little sync icon right over here. If I hover over that, you'll see that right now I'm going to synchronize with the remote server and not the testing server. That icon basically tells me which one I'm looking at. The little purple arrow on the bottom lets me know that I'm dealing with the remote server. If I switch, for example, if I go over to my testing server view, you'll notice that it changes to an orange. So if I go back to local view, now it's again orange. And so if I hover over that, it'll tell me you're going to be synchronizing with the testing server. So if I upload this file, I'm actually putting that file to the testing server and not the remote server. So it's a very quick and easy way to kind of look over here. You'll notice that the actual connection icon as well updates to show you that. So if I go back and choose the remote server and go back to local view, you'll notice that both of those icons change to indicate whether it's going to be going to the remote server or testing server or whichever server you're currently working with. So that's a small detail, but it's one of those really important ones. And it's one of those ones that at first glance you're like, that's not going to make that big of a deal. But once you start working with Dreamweaver CS6 for a while, it's really easy to just look over there, glance, you see the color that you're working with, and you know instantly which server you're interacting with. And that actually is going to save you a lot of time and save you from making some mistakes. So as a general overall thing, these FTP improvements might not be that noticeable at first glance when you're working with Dreamweaver, but it's going to have a huge impact on how you work with your sites. With Dreamweaver's improved FTP capabilities, managing your sites becomes much easier and a lot more efficient.